Friends, have you ever just met somebody that you want to dive into their wisdom? You see somebody perhaps online, and it's like, dude, that individual has a depth of knowledge that I just want to unpack a little bit because not only can it help you and I as listeners, but it also can help us as advisors, as coaches, consultants, the various people, attorneys, CPAs, those of you, even business owners. It can help us guide each other along this journey we call business. So joining me today is Miss Kelly Sturmthal. How are you, Kelly?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for inviting me. Look forward to a very encouraging conversation.
So before we dive into some of the questions that I want to unpack out of your mind, tell me a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where do you live? Who is Kelly behind the scenes?
Oh, sure. I am in Florida. I am an attorney. A CEPA, a Certified Exit Planning Advisor. Just love entrepreneurs. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and when my dad sadly passed away, when he passed away, my mom and brother and I took over his little business, and kept it. So it really is a legacy business. I have another fun part of my life. I'm married to a fighter pilot, retired, and then we have two boys that are in the engineering, military, aviation world. So cool little sub chapter. So I bring that military part to a lot of my advising as I work with business owners and families as they plan.
Absolutely. So in your professional career, though, you work primarily with affluent business owners and you're trying to help them plan for their legacy. What is it like to sit across the table from somebody who's perhaps spent decades, maybe multiple decades of their life working their fingers to the bone, as we often say, blood, sweat, and tears, right?
Right.
And now they're coming to somebody like yourself who's like, hey, Kelly, I have this dream of this legacy, or I have this idea, maybe perhaps exiting my business, or maybe I want to protect what I currently have. What is it like from the attorney seat to be able to have the opportunity to serve those type of people?
So it's always a story, and that's the most intriguing part of working with these clients is that they typically have a story that has so many details to it, and it is blood, sweat, and tears. Growing up in an entrepreneurial family, I saw the highs and the lows of that, and I know that the business owner is all day long striving to grow, and at the same time, when they come to me, I like to use that term protect and prosper. And I use protect first because we really want, they don't always have the bandwidth to protect what they have. So my first question is, tell me about how your business grew. And in that story is a lot of opportunity to guide.
Whenever you ask that question to the successful business owners who's reached some level of wealth, I like to have our audience trying to shoot their target to that deca millionaire status, right? Because you and I know through our CEPA training that literally the new $10 million mark is the old $1 million mark because of
Right.
inflation. And so somebody as a successful business owner is like, hey, I'm trying to reach that deca millionaire status. You and I often perhaps see that their business comprises of the large portion of that assets.
Mhm.
Whenever you're talking with a business owner on the other side of the table, do they realize that the value of their business comprises of their largest asset? And if so, what are their emotions that they have when they come to you for advice?
You have to sometimes remind them. I mean, I think they're in their business so with so much effort and energy as they put their day into their business that the value, everyone's striving to make it bigger and bigger and bigger, but they don't necessarily know their value. And I like to break it up into, is this the business that's going to be there for your family as time goes on? Are you retiring and getting income from it as you're retired? Are you selling it? What does it look like for your children or not? Maybe there's no one that wants to be involved in your family. And so how are we structuring it to get ready to sell? So a lot of my questions are questions that I find most business owners don't always think about. And I'm able to use that estate planning conversation to start. And then it just broadens into this planning conversation because there's so many details to talk about within their story.
Well, if most business owners don't think about those, what I consider fundamental questions, I guess
Mhm.
because of the industry that we operate in, you and I are trying to help business owners achieve various levels.
Right.
I know that you work with uber successful business owners as well. Do you find that the uber successful business owners have a different syntax, or perhaps they've thought a little bit more advanced than perhaps the average?
Yes. And typically what the magic is that they are working with a team. They are able to access their financial planner, their accountant, their attorney, or they're really relying on their professionals and they're remembering that they're there. I find those that are under that 10 million mark sometimes are just working so hard that they don't have the time to have the conversations with those professionals. So when we team up and collaborate, just so many more things. Scaling happens actually because we are utilizing some other professional that's bringing a insight to the table to make things scale quickly.
So we have a various number of professionals who listen to the show,
Okay.
thousands upon thousands of financial advisors, CPAs, attorneys, business brokers, M&A advisors, insurance agents, all the professionals perhaps you've dealt with in your life. But you know, there's probably more financial advisors listening to this show than any other main segment of listener. So if you're talking directly to the financial advisor out there and they're bringing you a client and it's like, hey, Kelly, I need some help. This individual, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, they need some help with their estate planning or getting their business prepared legally to start the transaction process to move the business perhaps to a child, a key employer, whomever else. Financial advisors, they're an interesting breed. I can say that because I've been one for over 20 years. They're an interesting breed. We're tenacious because it's such a hard industry to come into, and we have to know a lot of knowledge, but we often make what I call rookie mistakes. Whenever you're looking at a financial advisor, perhaps if they're introducing a client, what's one of the most common mistakes that financial advisors make? And whenever they're either preparing a client to meet with you or even in their advice that you end up having to deal with?
I think a financial planner sometimes separates the personal from the business. They're not addressing both sides of that, and it's a great opportunity for a financial planner to have a business conversation as they're having the personal wealth conversation. I think a lot of them start with the personal wealth. Also, I always offer to have a conversation with the client and the financial advisor. Sometimes I'll see that financial advisors are wisely using beneficiary forms, and yet they're not always having their clients double check them. What happens when we put a minor on a beneficiary form? You know, you really should determine it. Talk to an estate planning attorney. What happens if you have you put your revocable trust on your as a beneficiary? Do you have someone that maybe you don't want to be on your beneficiary form? Those are such excellent tools, and financial planners use them all the time. But I think it's really important to have a conversation with your client about, as you have that annual meeting, since financial planners are able to do that. Other professions aren't able to do that. You have such an opportunity to impact a business owner and to grow with them because you have the opportunity to meet with them once a year.
I want to go back to that first answer around having more conversations about both financial and business. So if we were role playing or if you were talking and coaching me as a financial planner, how might you coach me and say, hey, Justin, hey, Goodbread, man, really need to have this type of a dialogue. What would that dialogue look like for if I need to have a business conversation with that business owner?
I would suggest that you are separating their personal and their business. Make sure that the client is able to separate them. Sometimes they're coming in with information about their personal and their family, trying to really protect and prosper there. But then they're forgetting to give you as the financial planner insight about their business. What are the receivables like? How are they making money? Do they have a 5-10-year plan? Do they have a key person? They're two conversations and they're not always addressed in that initial meeting. Secondly, I would ensure that the financial planner says, I don't mind having a 15-minute conversation with your estate planning attorney just to see where they're going, because I know what I've known you for so long. I know what your financial direction is. And the estate planning attorney is talking about right now, but they're really planning for hopefully many, many years from now. So it's such a collaborative effort, and it's so productive when you get together with the two professionals.
So get the two talking to each other together. It's the old iron sharpens iron, right? And a multitude of counselors there safety, right?
I love that verse.
Yeah, absolutely. So, whenever we're talking to financial advisors, we also have business owners who are striving to become deca millionaires and
Hmm.
reach that moment so they can maintain their lifestyle through perpetuity without having to be enslaved by their business. So, as you're perhaps talking with the business owner, the financial advisor, what's the piece of advice that you would give them that you see could be a landmine or a roadblock for them in their perhaps estate, maybe tax, maybe business structure? It's like, hey, you really need to pay attention to this. Maybe it's one thing, maybe it's two things that you see could be devastating.
Knowing their financials. And what I mean by that is they've handed off bookkeeping. It's hard. I mean, I, as an entrepreneur and a person with a finance degree and understanding business ownership, it is another level to take the time to know your financials. But the fact that you can reduce your expenses slightly and make more income, that's a simple, easy thing to do. But you have to know your numbers. You have to get a report and be able to understand a report from QuickBooks or from your bookkeeper or accountant. And I think financial planners have an opportunity maybe to help there as another service, another opportunity to maybe increase their wealth, know your financials. And then also, most people are just working, working, working. And I don't think that they are actually striving towards a specific number. Doesn't mean that you're not caring for your client or growing your business, caring for your employees. But the number for many entrepreneurs is very important. I like to work on a monthly number. If I know a monthly number, it's just motivation for me personally to hit it. Taking care of my clients, or I know another facet to that I like to share is that when I know my number, hit my number for the month, I sometimes have a couple days at the end that I can push a client to the next month, and there's my free time, there's my family time, there's my downtime. So monthly versus annual is a whole different concept.
How does knowing your numbers connect with the legal work that you do?
When they know their business numbers, they know if their opportunity on the business side, are we selling? Am I trying to give this to family? Am I giving it to one of my three children? So it kind of has this value, this kind of it's a value that's moving quickly or changing. It's not a static number. Then it actually is a big part of your planning. You know that, am I only providing for one of my children? Is it uneven? How do I feel about that? Am I trying to sell this business, or what are my options? When we're on the personal side, knowing your personal numbers, since you are a very seasoned SEPA, that very often business owners don't know their own actual income. They're running things through their business. That's not bad. It's why we have businesses, but knowing what income you could leave for your family or what you're trying to leave as an inheritance, a lot of that's tied up in knowing your financials.
So, Kelly, in the second part of my question, you made a point around knowing when to quit. You didn't exactly say it that way. And I think it's very interesting because I see, and I'd be curious to see your insight on this. I see a lot of business owners who just love the game. It's not really about trying to achieve a deca millionaire status, even though they know they need to maintain their lifestyle, but they just really want to be the very best they can be. Maybe it's driven by they care about their employees. They care about their community. For me and my wife, it's our charities that we love to be a part of, right? So we all have different things that drive us, but there's this point to where ultimately we forget that we are mortal, that we are going to reach a point where our business is not going to continue in perpetuity, right?
Sure.
And even though we love it and the business becomes part of who we are, how do you advise that client who doesn't realize their mortality? That they look at their business as if it's part of them. Maybe it's their third, fourth child in their family. And they just like, man, I'm loving this. I'm having fun. I'm never going to retire. How do you help that individual prepare for the inevitable event of something in the future?
I would say that there really is a difference between someone that plans before they're 50 and after they're 50. It's a second chapter and their motivation changes. Some of that is personal knowledge of, actually watching how my interest is more in giving back or charity or impact in the second chapter versus I'm over 50, versus the beginning where you're hustling. The second part is I like to throw out, hey, could you ever take 4 weeks off? Could you ever take your spouse or your family on a month-long vacation? And that's a good indicator of whether they're so entrenched in the business that they can't, or they're the sole part of the business. I feel like gives me an open door to say, if you're excellent at this, you actually have the opportunity to sell it, have a nest egg, and start over because you've figured out the formula, in your industry. That's an option. So again, that's why I love the planning. There are so many wonderful conversations to have with business owners and collaborative team conversations that push a person forward and talk about impact. I mean, that's pretty special when you're able to take someone's life's work and impact their family and others and charities and so many other facets to life. So,
one of the misconceptions I had in my ignorance when I was selling my first and second business is the various disciplines of attorneys and how we might need different skill sets throughout different chapters of our different seasons, if you will, of our business journey. And to my own ignorance, I used to think an attorney is an attorney. And I didn't realize that there were as many flavors of attorney as there are Baskin-Robbins ice cream. I didn't realize that there were different specialties.
right.
And so as you're consulting with that business owner or working alongside the financial advisors, specifically in the Florida area, what other attorneys, what other specialties might you couple up with to complement and help that business owner achieve their ultimate outcome?
Absolutely. So often a entrepreneur is somehow connected to real estate. So having a real estate section, whether they're buying up properties within their business, I'll often tell a business owner, you're also your business is also real estate, and they're surprised by that. So a real estate attorney, potentially a intellectual property. What are we protecting? Hopefully you don't need a litigation attorney. That is typically we're trying to catch those scenarios that might cause trouble, because that opens up a whole nother door. We talking about employment law, litigation, bankruptcy, that is a whole another layer. I like to think of myself as an estate planning and business planning attorney, that I'm catching all the transactional, all the drafting, the written, and then hearing, that might be an opportunity to bring in another attorney, or let's watch that so that we don't have an issue with the litigation issue. So real estate, tax attorney, which is, a lot of times estate planning attorneys are tax attorneys. And then really just having resources. I grew up in this area, and as a transactional attorney, one of the most important things that I do is get to know other attorneys. I like to use the term concierge attorney at times because, as you said, I can't solve every legal issue, but if I have already vetted an attorney that I know is excellent at what they do and how they charge their client, I can match them up properly and really benefit the client.
What is the worst internet advice that you've seen that business owners need to kind of like, if you're at the edge of a bridge, you're like, dude, don't come this way. No, no, no. What would that be?
We're always lifelong learners, and a lot of times you're getting so much information, and I think it's very difficult. As an entrepreneur tends to be someone that processes a lot of information, and they are picking and choosing what is applicable. But I think the application of this volume of information is sometimes a misstep. Meaning we take in so much, and actually, are we actually applying what is critical to that season of our business? So it's really kind of putting a boundary on the information that you take in as an entrepreneur or as you're planning for your business, and then you implement it, or you risk it, or you try it, because otherwise we're stepping forward in 15 different ways and we're not moving forward. It's just a volume of information, online. Secondly, I think so AI, as is such a hot topic these days, it is prone to making you feel like that is the answer, that it's been decided, that fantastic computer is looking through so many options. And I just really think that it's just to be looked at with caution. A lot of attorneys said, we don't want to engage initially because is it taking our work product and then manipulating with many, many other work products and then pushing out a document that may or may not be appropriate for a client. Every situation is very fact-based. So I think it's a very interesting tool, great for marketing, great for getting words, using the right words in the right scenario. But I just always like to add that element of just double check it. A double check, that's probably would be my wisdom. Like, just don't move so fast that you're not double checking some of the information you're getting as you're applying all that wisdom you're learning.
You're going to laugh at this. So, I'm the very person you just described, and most of our audience is that we love to learn. We do things. So we had to write a contract for a particular offer that we have in our company. And I have two very good attorneys that I trust immensely. They helped me through all my last exits and saved me from some stupid mistakes because of my own studying. So I was like, I'm going to use AI to draft this contract. So I knew the elements of the contract. I've been around for 30 years. I've gone through 7 transactions. I've spent literally millions of dollars with lawyers over the 30 years. So I'm like, okay, I can do this. Surely I can, right? What's the term, per se litigant or something like that? So I'm like, I'm going to do it myself, right? So I drafted out this thing with AI, and I was getting ready to send it to the client. And I was like, you know what? I better bounce it off my guru. So I sent it to him, and he called me. He's like, Goodbread, dude. Okay, so we got two things. Either I can tear this thing apart and tell you all the reasons why it won't work in our domicile, or you can just pay me to do it the right way. And I was like, is it that bad? He said, you use an AI software, didn't you? I said, yeah. I said, but it has all the elements. He said, it's just not designed for us, for our state. And if you go to court with this, if you had to defend it, it's going to be problematic. So I paid him to obviously do the right contract. He's top tier attorney, Kelly. And whenever we got done, I said, just by curiosity, I ran his contract in comparison to mine through the software to do a line by line and see the differences and the rationale behind the changes. Yeah, I would have been up the creek without a paddle, as they say. God. It was that bad. It was that bad. Have you seen that if somebody trying to do that at this point?
Oh my gosh, you just brought up another. It actually is more expensive to bring in the document you found or the template, because taking it line by line is more cumbersome than starting with what the attorney knows for your state for that scenario, and then putting in this, there's 2 or 3 lines sometimes in a document that will change everything, which may have been the case with you, but a word can change something. So I just think that business owners are notorious for figuring things out on their own. They're so smart, so savvy. You're a great example of that. So able to do so many things. It's just there's a few categories that you might want to kind of create a little budget so that you just get it done right the first time, and it's actually less expensive. You're saving yourself from potential litigation, potential problems with that particular word, and then, of course, paying for it twice. All that time you spent on it, and then paying your attorney as well. So,
I'm curious, what is the one pearl of wisdom that you would give successful business owners out there? Those who are, in the top 20%, if we use that analogy of 80-20, they're the top 20%. They're the movers and shakers. They're the ones moving the backbones of our different societies around the country, around the world. And if you had the opportunity to sit up on stage in front of all of them, because literally you're on front of stage in front of thousands of them right now, if you wanted to give them the one pearl of wisdom, what would it be?
Communicate. And that word is mostly because very often you're so busy with your business that you're forgetting to communicate with family, or you're so busy with your business that you're not communicating with your professionals. So that taking that, even if you block one day a month, that you're just double or reviewing, I think is the best word, reviewing what you're in the middle of. And have you spent that time with your family? Have you, to balance it, is there something that's pending from a professional that said, I just need to talk to you about that tax, or I need you to look at that contract? And it's in this fast-paced world, it's the one element that people are making mistakes because they're not taking that planning day, because everything's moving so quickly. So the communication within that one day, you can get so much done if you actually just step back and review what you're in the middle of for your personal life and your professional life.
I'm curious. My wife and I implemented this off the advice that you just gave from
Oh,
another attorney that I know dearly. And he said, "Hey, as you scale in business, as your business becomes more and more successful, and you have the various things you mentioned, real estate, we may have employees, we may be looking at a transaction to where we want to transition our business in the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years. We may be in a hyper growth rate where our margins are increasing greatly. We may have a market penetration thing that we're trying to drive into our business." And so he said, Goodbread, as fast as you're moving and as many things as you have happening in your family, may I challenge you to have a family board meeting? And so, Kelly, what we started doing, I think it was about 5 years ago now, is we would get our family together, my wife, myself, and my 3 children who are
oh,
minors.
wow.
And we
Okay.
put them around the table at our lawyer's office. And then joining us would be our CPA and our financial advisor. I was a top tier financial advisor, and I still had my financial advisor there at the table. So we had our 3 people. I always consider the financial advisor, the CPA, and our estate planning attorney to be the hub and spoke. We got to have those 3 on board. And we'd spend, 3, 4, 5 hours kind of making sure everything's updated, making sure everything was put together. It cost us a little bit of money, but what it ended up doing was it ended up propelling me and my family to greater outcomes than we might have achieved because we had those 3 different viewpoints to drive and speak to us. That was number one. Number two is that I had this fear, and I've heard this from several audience. I really want to hit this last point. I know I was wrapping down, but I want to hit this last point. I think you can speak into this, knowing your family and your belief structure, and everything we've talked about offline. But I didn't want to raise. I don't want to raise trust fund babies would be the term that we often would recognize. I didn't want my children to say, "Hey, daddy and mama succeeded, and therefore we don't have to go out and move on." I love how Shaquille O'Neal said himself, "I'm rich and you got to go make your own money," is what he told his children, right? "I'll pay you to get a
Right.
master's degree, but you're going to have to go make your own money. I'll help you, but you got to make your own."
Right.
So I didn't want to raise that. And my family and these advisors who I deeply confide in, they were able to speak not only to my wife and I, but they were also able to speak at an elementary level to my 10-year-old on
Right.
what they're happening. The 10-year-old seeing the family data points. And whenever I say that, I can hear business owners right now cringing, like, "I don't want my kids to know. I don't want my children to
Oh.
know." But it's been totally opposite for me. I'd be interested to see your take on that type of an approach.
Oh my gosh, love it, love it, love it. Mostly because I've even suggested that clients introduce their young adult children to their financial planner, because how else are you teaching them? Also, that the child of an entrepreneur, it has so much more insight than any parent or even that child realizes when they get out into the work world, because they've been hearing it at the kitchen table, in the kitchen, going, between you and your wife as you're managing businesses and life. They have so much insight. I felt like my dad and mom gave me so much insight growing up in that entrepreneurial family. And the the fear of not telling your children what you have, it's yours. It's still yours as husband and wife, and they're not getting it. It doesn't mean what it's doing is in having that family conversation, you're actually showing them what it took to get there. You'll say something, your kids will say, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know dad knew that." Or your wife will say, a comment about some part of the conversation. And I just think it's educational for your children. And it also gives them insight into, this is what you have to do if you're going to be successful. I think hiding numbers and information from kids, you have every right to spend it before they inherit it. So hiding it from children is not necessarily as productive as including them in the conversation.
Wow. Well, thank you for that insight. I didn't plan on asking that question, but as you opened the door, I wanted to walk through it because I have so many business owners who connect with us on LinkedIn or make comments on even our blog posts and stuff. And it's always around this, "Hey, when do I tell my kids? When do I tell my employees? When do I tell?" And it's always about including those whom they care about the deepest into these very integral conversations that are often filled with emotion
Right.
and a little bit of
Right.
tough love from the advisors involved, which we're paying for. So
Yep.
thank you for that insight. So Kelly, as we wrap this up, I know we have listeners all over the United States, but if somebody said, "Man, I just want to pick Kelly's brain, or I'd like to perhaps engage you. I'm a successful business owner. You're an expert in this area." Friends, I would not have Kelly on the show if I did not know her and her tenacity and also her reputation, and our team and what she's done through her training has been paramount. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you, where might you direct them?
I have a website, Kelly ESQ, mostly because my last name is quite long. So that's a great starting point. I usually have an introductory conversation because I just love stories. I mean, I really appreciate entrepreneurs when you think about it. They had an idea and they actually took that idea and cared for their family and cared for their employees and made a difference in their community. I mean, it's just really a great opportunity to hear about their story and see if there's a chance to plan with them. Planning is really my favorite part of what I do. So reach out or pop on to kellyesq.com and you can set up a time to meet with me there. So thanks for
Absolutely.
that.
And we'll put a link inside the show notes here, friends, and everywhere you're listening or watching this online, you'll look at in the show notes, you'll see a link to Kelly's website there. And I would challenge you, if you've never worked one-on-one with an attorney and you have any type of success, any type, you're starting to feel like your head's above water finally, may I challenge you, that's one of the very first conversations you should have. You want to begin protecting everything that God's provided for you. You want to begin protecting all those things that you've been working hard for. And our friends, our brothers and sisters out there who carry this mantle of being an estate planning / tax planning attorney, they're very wise. They have literally saved me hundreds, if not millions of dollars. It's ridiculous on the amount of money they've saved me personally. And I've also seen them impact the lives of our clients. So Kelly, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you. I just so enjoy talking about this, and thank you for all that you've done for many others and many SEPAs and charities, and of course, impacting your family.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Kelly.
it.
Friends, as I say every week, y'all go out and make it a great day. Till next time.